What's going on, guys, and welcome to Rabbit's Used Cars. Sitting here in the office, this is the birthplace of good bullshitting sessions. So I heard a story the other day that I wanted to share with you guys. So I got a good friend of mine, sign painter, super cool guy, talented artist. And, you know, he was over here doing some work for me. And he shared a story with me that literally gave me the biggest story boner from way back. Like, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. And I wanted to share it with you guys. So you guys really loved a story that I did that kind of had a similar background to it. But it's really interesting, the twist on this. And so I got to be able to tell you this story and keep the details a little vague. The guy that actually we're going to be talking about passed away just this year. So I'm going to try to keep the details vague, but I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be really hard for you not to Google and start figuring it out. But something I didn't know, and I'll be honest with you, I've lived in this area my whole life. Literally next state over, up in North Carolina, there is a manufacturer of storage buildings, and they are huge here in the Southeast. You know, when I say storage buildings, kind of like the things my neighbors wanted me to put in my backyard when I threatened to do single wide trailers, but like, you know, like little utility buildings. And this company's still in business today, and they're huge in the Southeast, and they sell storage buildings. Well, you know, they have a plant that builds storage buildings, and you gotta think about it, it's like a big warehouse like this, but probably bigger, that they build little houses inside of, basically. And, you know, you got to think there's a lot of moving parts to a business like that. Of course, you got your carpenters and all that stuff, but you also have to be able to deliver these buildings. So you have to have big flatbed trucks, or basically like a rollback, that hauls these buildings because they're on skids, basically. So they can slide it up on, winch it up on the truck and slide it back off and unload it or whatever, level them up, set them up and all that stuff. So my buddy got a job when times got slow doing his work. He worked down at the storage building place. Keep trying not to say the name of the company. He had a CDL, so naturally, driving a truck was his idea. He was delivering buildings, and you know, he'd deliver 3 or 4 a day. You know, and they'd either go to a place that resold them, or they'd deliver them to, you know, a piece of property or behind somebody's house or whatnot. And, you know, keep in mind, these buildings, I mean, they were from, you know, 8 foot long to 20 foot long. I mean, some of these were big. It was funny how different people spec these buildings out. You know, keep in mind, they're all made out of wood. You got shingle roofs on and whatnot. And, you know, some people would order them where they're all decked out on the outside, but on the inside, they just kind of be studs. And some people got them to where they were, you know, sheetrocked, or, you know, had like paneling put up or whatnot, and cabinets. And I mean, you can take as far as you want to go. I mean, hell, you could virtually make it to where you could live in it. It's like a tiny house before tiny houses. Well, the guy that owned this company, and like I said, this is a very big company in the Southeast. So he come into this small town in North Carolina, and, you know, it really didn't raise a lot of eyebrows, the things that he was doing, because his business was so successful. And he, keep in mind, he employed virtually everybody in this town doing something, whether they worked directly for him or they were doing something for the company or something for him. He's actually into longhorn cows, you know, like the big Texas Longhorns, which are in Texas, that he brought to his ranch up here up there in North Carolina. That's how my buddy got to know him, actually, is he's painting all the signs for his Longhorn ranch. So we're sitting there talking, and I'm like, man, you know, it makes killer money selling buildings, you know, and man's got a thing for cows with horns. And he goes, yeah, but there was more to them than that. And he said he always drove new Cadillacs and just everything. This guy always wore a cowboy hat, but he was like a Texas cowboy, not like a North Carolina cowboy, you know. And Mr. Cool always dressed to kill, through these big parties, and, you know, everybody loved him and all this stuff. I really was kind of getting like the Brad Wesley vibes from Roadhouse from this guy. Like, he did no wrong in this town. You know, he could do anything he wanted. Almost bulletproof, invincible. You know, my buddy would work delivering buildings when, you know, his job slowed up a little bit. You know, it's kind of like he could go back and forth and do what he wanted. He had a dispatcher that worked there that he would come in and be like, hey, where am I headed today? You know, he'd get his truck and he'd get his little papers and like, this building's going here. And it would have instructions for every building. So, this 8x20 building's going to blah, blah, blah address, park here. And like it'd be drew out on the property where it needs to sit. And it would say, level it up, get it ready for the customer and all that. Well, he picked up this one building in particular. And keep in mind, it wasn't unusual for someone to want to move a building themselves or to do whatever. But he said, park at the back of property as far back as possible. Do not level, do not open doors. Okay, so he went to go pick up the building. And this building was literally just plywood. It didn't have a shingle roof on it. I mean, it was just like really weird that it was just like the cheapest, like it wasn't finished. No windows in it, obviously. But it was just a plywood box, basically. It may look like a building, but, it wasn't finished out even remotely. And he thought, well, maybe they're going to build it to match or whatever. He didn't recognize the address, and it was actually going an hour down the road. So he backs his truck up to it, puts the bed back, and he goes to winch it up. And he notices how slow it is to winch this building up. Well, why is it slow to winch up? Because it's heavy. Okay, why is this building so damn heavy and it's not even finished? Whatever, above my pay grade. Got it on the truck, hops in, does his thing. Hits the road with it, and I'm like, he could tell driving it that it was heavy. He thought, well, maybe they ordered a cabinet package in or just whatever. So he pulls up to that address. Well, he didn't read the rest of the note on it that said not to level it up, not to open it up or anything. He just called the address, like, whatever, it'll take it. Keep in mind, leveling these buildings up is not a real big deal. It's not rocket science or anything like that. But anyway, well, he pulls up to this address and it's just an empty field with trees that lined it all the way around. To put it at the back of the property, you can't even see it from the road anymore. So he says, well, I guess that's where it needs to go. So he pulls down and goes to the very back of the property. And he told me it might have been on the left side of the property or the right side or whatever, but one corner of it, they wanted it. All the way in the back, as far as you could put it, up to the trees. So he backed it all the way in or whatever and got it put there. Well, even unloading it, how heavy it was. Well, keep in mind the doors had zip ties on them, holding the door shut. Well, he didn't think anything about it. He cut the zip ties off of it. He said, I'll level this thing up. He opens up, it's full of cabinets. Why the hell would you order a building that's full of cabinets on the inside, but the outside of it has no siding on it, no shingles? I mean, if it gets wet, it's going to get water in it. Why did we do this? So naturally leveling it up, he's like, then why is it still so damn heavy? I mean, cabinets are a little heavy, but this thing's heavy. Well, he opens the door, sees these tight little wrapped brown plastic packages, sealed up tight, about this big, weigh about 2.2 pounds. That's a kilogram. Just throwing that out there. Shuts the cabinet, shuts the doors, rolls bed back on the truck, rolls out, drops the truck off, walks in, tells the dispatcher, hey, bud, I can't work here anymore. I've got some other things going on. I don't think this is going to work for me. Made his exit. Well, a couple of days goes by, and he's sitting at home, piddling around or whatever, and a black Crown Vic comes pulling up in his driveway. And 3 guys in suits get out. And they walk up to him, and they said, Mr. Blah, blah, blah. And he said, yeah. And then he recognized one of the guys. It was the dispatcher. He goes, why'd you quit? And he goes, well, so I got some other things going on, and I'll be honest with you, driving that truck's a little rough on my back and all that. He goes, so you tell me you didn't see anything that maybe spooked you a little bit or scared you? He said, you're safe. You're fine. You're not in trouble. And by this time, the guys done flipped their badges out. This is feds. And he goes, yeah, I saw a whole bunch of damn coke in a building. And he said, that, I'm getting the hell out of here. And he said, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to be in the middle of that. And he goes, can you do us one favor? He said, keep in mind, you're not in trouble. He said, can you take us back to exactly where you put that building? He goes, yeah. And he said, you mind riding with us, riding out there? Well, it was a couple hour ride from his house to there. So he's sitting here riding in this blacked out Crown Vic, and they ride out to this property. And he goes, well, it's this field right here. And they turn up into the field and drive through, and the building's gone. Nothing. But you could see where those skids were in the grass. You know, maybe made some ruts in it or whatever. You can even see where the truck came in. And he goes, that's crazy, that building. I mean, I know I dropped it right there. And then, of course, I seen where the skids were. He said, we believe you. And I said, do you want to see the risk? He said, so why in the hell would I put in all this in the back of a field somewhere? You know, there's no tracks coming up to it. You know, why do it like this? He goes, get back in the car. So they get in the car, and they literally drive around. You know, it might have been a couple miles, but, you know, drove the roads around. And you'll never guess what was on the other side of that field. Keep in mind, he had to drive deep into this field. Was an airport. And that's how they were getting the product out of there. Well, needless to say, they had a lot of evidence, and this happened a lot. This was his first time seeing it, but apparently it's happened several other times. And the dispatcher was also a Fed working undercover, following this trafficking outfit. And he'd been there for years. That was the crazy thing. And he had no idea this guy was undercover. This guy actually served all the way up to this past year. And then he actually died as soon as he got out, which was really kind of sucky. But he was actually an older guy. He was in prison for almost like 20 years for trafficking. It blows my mind because the company's still open. And if you ever go on their website, they look extremely wholesome, which tickles me. And they don't have the same owners anymore. It's been bought out and all that stuff. You know, it just goes to show you, every time I look at the building, I think about the guy with the Texas Longhorn cows and trafficking coke. Gotta love it here in the South. Guys, we'll catch you next time at Rabbit's Used Cars. Well, anyway. Sorry. And, no, Matt, I'm not making fun of you. This time. Oh, don't do these, rubbing his nipples. Oh, so gross. Anyway, so we're standing. Perfect.